The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace as Queen Elizabeth II sat in her private study, reading through the daily briefings. It was early 2016, and at nearly 90 years old, she moved with the same purposeful grace that had defined her reign for over 6 decades. Her lady-in-waiting had just informed her about the elaborate plans being discussed for her upcoming milestone birthday. Prince Charles entered the room quietly, carrying a folder of correspondence. He had been thinking deeply about his mother's approaching 90th birthday and the weight of what it meant for the monarchy. As heir to the throne, he understood better than anyone the remarkable achievement his mother represented. No British monarch had ever celebrated their 90th birthday while still actively reigning. "Mother, I've been reviewing the preliminary plans for the birthday celebrations," Charles said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "The public response has been overwhelming. Letters are pouring in from across the Commonwealth." The Queen looked up from her papers, her eyes bright with interest. She had always been deeply moved by public support, though she rarely showed it openly. "What are people saying, Charles?" Charles opened his folder and pulled out several letters. "This one is from a school in Canada. The children have each drawn pictures of you through the decades. And here's one from a veteran in Australia who served during the war. He writes about how your Christmas broadcasts helped him through difficult times." The Queen smiled softly. These personal connections had always meant more to her than grand ceremonies or official accolades. She thought back to her coronation day in 1953 when she was just 27 years old. The young woman who had promised to serve her whole life had indeed kept that promise through decades of change, challenge, and triumph. "You know, Charles, when I was crowned, I never imagined I would still be here at 90, she said thoughtfully. "The world has changed so dramatically. When I became queen, we had just emerged from a war, rationing was still in place, and the empire was beginning its transformation into the Commonwealth." Prince Charles nodded, remembering stories from his childhood about those early years. "You've witnessed more change than any monarch in history, Mother. From post-war reconstruction to the digital age." The Queen stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where tourists were already gathering despite the early hour. "The role has evolved, certainly, but the fundamental duty remains the same, to serve the people with dedication and neutrality." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Prince William, who had requested a private meeting with his grandmother and father. The young prince, now second in line to the throne, carried himself with a blend of royal dignity and modern relatability that had endeared him to the public. "Granny, I wanted to discuss the birthday celebrations with you personally," William said, using the informal address he had called her since childhood. "Harry and I have been talking about what this milestone means, not just for you, but for all of us." The Queen gestured for him to sit. She had always had a special relationship with William and Harry, especially after their mother's tragic death in 1997. Watching them grow into capable young men had been one of her greatest joys. "We want to ensure the celebrations reflect who you really are," William continued. "Not just the formal ceremonies, but the grandmother, the woman who has devoted her entire adult life to service." Prince Charles watched this exchange with deep emotion. 3 generations of the Windsor family sat in this room, each carrying the weight of duty in their own way. He thought about the conversations he'd been having with his sons about the future of the monarchy, about how they could honor tradition while remaining relevant to modern Britain. The Queen considered William's words carefully. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, we thought about having events that show different aspects of your life and reign," William explained. "The official celebrations are important, but we also want moments that feel personal, that show the woman behind the crown." The Queen appreciated her grandson's thoughtfulness. Throughout her long reign, she had struggled with the balance between public duty and private life. The crown had demanded sacrifices, but it had also given her purpose and meaning that few people could understand. "There's something else," William added, glancing at his father. "We want to use this milestone to look forward as well as back, to show that the monarchy continues to evolve and serve the people's needs." Charles nodded in agreement. The 90th birthday isn't just about celebrating the past, Mother. It's about demonstrating the continuity and stability you've provided and how that foundation supports the future. The Queen returned to her desk, picking up one of the letters Charles had brought. It was from a young girl who had written about wanting to be like the Queen when she grew up, strong, kind, and dedicated to helping others. These simple, heartfelt messages reminded her why the work mattered. You know, she said quietly, when people ask me about the secret to longevity in this role, I always think it comes back to remembering that it's not about me personally. It's about what the monarchy represents: stability, continuity, service to others. Prince William leaned forward. But, Granny, your personal qualities are what have made the monarchy what it is today. Your sense of duty, your discretion, your ability to remain above politics while still being engaged with the world. The conversation was interrupted by a gentle knock on the door. Princess, and the Queen's only daughter, entered with her characteristic brisk efficiency. Known for her no-nonsense approach and incredible work ethic, and had become one of the hardest working members of the royal family. I hope I'm not interrupting, and said, but I wanted to discuss the logistical aspects of the birthday events. We need to coordinate with security, the local councils, and the various charities that want to participate. The Queen smiled at her daughter's practical approach, and had always been direct and focused, qualities that had served the family well over the years. Please join us. We were discussing how to make the celebrations meaningful, and took a seat, pulling out her own folder of notes. I've been thinking about this from the perspective of the organizations you patron. Many of them want to do something special to mark the occasion. The Women's Institute is planning a nationwide baking project. The Royal British Legion wants to organize veteran tributes. The mention of the Women's Institute made the Queen's eyes twinkle with amusement. Her famous appearance at their meeting years earlier, when the audience had interrupted her speech with applause criticizing government policy, had become legendary. It demonstrated her ability to handle unexpected moments with grace and humor. The personal touches matter, and continued. People remember the human moments, when you laughed at the WI, when you jumped out of a helicopter with James Bond for the Olympics opening ceremony, when you had tea with Paddington Bear. Prince Charles chuckled at the mention of these iconic moments. Mother, you've always understood that the crown requires both dignity and approachability. The Olympics opening ceremony was brilliant. It showed you could be both regal and playful. The Queen reflected on that evening at the 2012 Olympics. Working with the actor Daniel Craig had been surprisingly enjoyable, and she had loved surprising people with her willingness to participate in the comedy sketch. It had shown a different side of her personality that the public rarely saw. The key, she said thoughtfully, has always been knowing when to break protocol in service of a larger purpose. The Olympic ceremony was about showing the world what Britain could achieve. Sometimes the monarchy needs to evolve to remain relevant. William nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly what we want to capture in the 90th birthday celebrations. The tradition and continuity, but also the adaptation and evolution. As the family continued their discussion, each member brought their own perspective to the planning process. They talked about the formal events, the trooping the color ceremony, the service of Thanksgiving, the official portraits. But they also discussed the more personal celebrations, the family gatherings, the private moments that would make the milestone meaningful for the Queen herself. The conversation revealed the deep respect and affection that existed within the royal family. Despite the pressures and challenges of public life, they remained fundamentally a family, bound together by love, duty, and shared purpose. The Queen's 90th birthday would be a celebration not just of her remarkable achievement, but of the institution she had shaped and the family that would carry it forward. As the morning wore on, other family members joined the discussion. Each brought their own ideas and perspectives, creating a rich tapestry of plans that would honor both the personal and public dimensions of the Queen's extraordinary life. The birthday celebrations would become a reflection of everything the monarchy had become during her remarkable reign. The Duke of Edinburgh sat in his private workshop at Windsor Castle, carefully examining the blueprints for a special carriage restoration project. Prince Philip, now 94 years old, had decided that his wife's 90th birthday deserved something truly unique. He was personally overseeing the restoration of a historic royal carriage that would be used in the birthday procession. His hands, weathered from decades of outdoor activities and royal duties, traced the detailed drawings. Philip had always been a man of action, someone who preferred doing the talking. While others planned ceremonies and speeches, he focused on tangible contributions that would make the day special for Elizabeth. "The wheel mechanisms need complete rebuilding," he muttered to himself, making notes in the margins. "Can't have the thing breaking down during the procession." His assistant entered the workshop carrying additional technical specifications. "Your Royal Highness, the craftsmen want to know about the interior restoration. Should they maintain the original design or make modifications for comfort?" Philip looked up, his sharp blue eyes still bright with intelligence and determination. "Elizabeth has been sitting in uncomfortable ceremonial seats for 70 years. We'll make it comfortable without compromising the historical integrity." The Duke's attention to detail reflected his lifelong commitment to supporting his wife's reign. For over 6 decades, he had walked 2 steps behind her in public, while being her closest advisor and strongest supporter in private. The carriage restoration was typical of his approach, practical, thoughtful, and designed to make her life easier. Meanwhile, at Clarence House, Prince Harry was meeting with veterans from various military charities. The young prince, who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, had proposed that military veterans play a central role in his grandmother's birthday celebrations. He understood the deep connection between the Queen and the armed forces she had served as Commander-in-Chief for over 60 years. "The Queen has been our Commander-in-Chief longer than anyone in history," Harry explained to the gathered veterans. "She's seen us through conflicts from Korea to Afghanistan. We want to show her what that support has meant to the men and women who serve." An elderly veteran from the Falklands War raised his hand. "Sir, many of us remember her Christmas broadcasts during difficult deployments. Hearing her voice reminded us what we were fighting for: home, family, the values she represents." Harry nodded, deeply moved by the man's words. He had experienced this himself during his own military service. That's exactly why this needs to be part of the celebration. She's not just a figurehead to the military. She's genuinely cared about every person who's worn the uniform. A younger veteran from Afghanistan spoke up. "Prince Harry, what you did out there with us, that came from her example, didn't it? The way she's always put service above personal comfort." The comment struck Harry powerfully. His military service had indeed been shaped by his grandmother's example of duty and sacrifice. Watching her dedication throughout his childhood had instilled in him the belief that privilege came with responsibility. "We want to create a moment during the birthday celebrations where she can see the impact of her support," Harry continued. Veterans from every conflict since she became queen, representing all 3 services, showing her that her constancy has mattered. Back at Buckingham Palace, the Duchess of Cambridge was working on a completely different aspect of the celebrations. Catherine had suggested creating a photography exhibition that would show the Queen's life through the eyes of ordinary people. She was reviewing thousands of photographs submitted by the public, candid shots of the Queen during walkabouts, formal portraits from local events, pictures taken by children during school visits. "This one is perfect," Catherine said to her assistant, holding up a photograph of the Queen laughing with a group of school children in Manchester. "It captures her natural warmth with young people." Catherine had always been struck by the Queen's ability to connect with children. During her own integration into the royal family, she had watched her grandmother-in-law's interactions with young people and learned from her natural ease and genuine interest. The project had revealed something unexpected. While official royal photographs showed the Queen's formal dignity, these public submissions captured her humanity, moments of laughter, concern, curiosity, and warmth that official photographers rarely captured. "The public sees sides of her that we sometimes miss," Catherine mused, studying a photograph of the Queen deep in conversation with an elderly man at a community center. "They see her as a person, not just a symbol." At St. James's palace, Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice were coordinating with youth organizations across the Commonwealth. The Queen's granddaughters had proposed that young people from all the Commonwealth nations contribute to the birthday celebrations, reflecting the Queen's role as head of the Commonwealth. Granny has always been passionate about the Commonwealth. Eugenie explained to representatives from youth organizations in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the Caribbean. She's watched these nations develop and grow throughout her reign. Beatrice added, "We want young people from across the Commonwealth to share what the Queen and the Commonwealth mean to them. It's about the future, not just the past." The responses from Commonwealth youth had been overwhelming. Young people from tiny Pacific islands and bustling cities alike wanted to participate. They proposed everything from coordinated musical performances to environmental projects undertaken in the Queen's honor. A representative from Jamaica spoke via video link. "Our young people want to show how the Commonwealth has evolved. The Queen has been a constant presence as our nations have found our own identities while maintaining these important connections." The conversation highlighted something significant about the Queen's reign. While the British Empire had ended during her time on the throne, the Commonwealth had emerged as something new, a voluntary association of nations bound by shared values rather than colonial history. Meanwhile, Prince Edward and the Countess of Wessex were working with arts organizations to plan cultural celebrations. Edward, with his background in theater and television, understood the power of performance to communicate emotion and meaning. The Queen has been patron of hundreds of arts organizations. Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, explained to a gathering of artistic directors. She supported British culture throughout tremendous changes in society. Edward nodded. "We want performances that reflect the breadth of British and Commonwealth culture, traditional and contemporary, classical and popular. Something that shows how culture has flourished during her reign." A representative from the Royal Opera House suggested, "We could commission new works specifically for the occasion, pieces that reflect her reign and look toward the future." The idea sparked enthusiasm. Composers, choreographers, and writers began proposing new works that would premiere during the birthday celebrations. These wouldn't be formal tributes, but creative explorations of themes that had defined the Queen's reign: service, continuity, adaptation, and hope. Back at Windsor Castle, the Queen herself was having a quiet conversation with her racing manager about a different aspect of the celebrations. Horse racing had been her lifelong passion, and she wanted the birthday events to include something connected to her beloved horses. "Ma'am, we could arrange for some of your most successful racehorses to participate in the procession," her racing manager suggested. "The public knows how much the horses mean to you." The Queen's face lit up with genuine pleasure. Of all her roles and responsibilities, her involvement with horses remained purely personal, a source of joy rather than duty. "That would be wonderful. Perhaps we could also invite some of the stable staff who've worked with the horses over the years." This suggestion revealed something important about the Queen's character. While the grand ceremonies would celebrate her public role, she also wanted to acknowledge the people who had shared her private passions: the stable hands, trainers, and jockeys who had been part of her equestrian world for decades. As spring progressed, the various planning committees began to coordinate their efforts. Each family member's contribution reflected their own relationship with the Queen and their understanding of what made her unique. The celebrations were becoming a portrait of the Queen, painted by the people who knew her best. Prince Andrew, working with naval organizations, focused on her role as Lord High Admiral. The Duke of York understood the military tradition that had shaped his mother's sense of duty. He proposed naval displays that would show the evolution of the Royal Navy during her reign. The Queen launched her first ship in 1944, before she was even Queen, Andrew explained to naval commanders. She's seen the Navy through the transition from the age of battleships to modern warfare. The Countess of Wessex, meanwhile, was coordinating with women's organizations across the Commonwealth. Sophie had observed how the Queen had navigated being a woman in what was historically a male role, and she wanted the celebrations to acknowledge this pioneering aspect of her reign. She became Queen at 25, In an era when women had far fewer opportunities, Sophie reflected. She's been a role model for women's leadership without ever making it about gender politics. As the various planning streams came together, a picture emerged of celebrations that would be both deeply personal and grandly ceremonial. The Queen's family had succeeded in creating events that would honor her public service, while revealing the woman behind the crown. The 90th birthday celebrations would become a reflection of everything the Queen had meant to her family, her nation, and the Commonwealth during her extraordinary reign. As April 2016 approached, the Queen found herself reflecting more deeply on the milestone approaching her. She had never been one for excessive introspection, preferring action to contemplation, but the magnitude of reaching 90 while still actively reigning demanded some consideration of what it all meant. On a quiet morning at Windsor Castle, she walked through the gardens that had become her sanctuary during the pandemic years that lay ahead, though she couldn't know that then. The spring flowers were beginning to bloom, and she paused to examine the daffodils that had been planted decades earlier. These gardens had witnessed 9 decades of her life, from a young princess who had played here with her sister Margaret, to the Queen who now walked these paths with the accumulated wisdom of an unparalleled reign. Her private secretary approached with the morning briefings, but she gestured for him to wait. "Tell me," she said thoughtfully, "what are people really saying about this birthday? Not the official responses, but what are you hearing from ordinary people?" The private secretary, who had served her for many years, understood that she wanted honest assessment, not flattery. "Ma'am, there's a genuine sense of amazement, I think. People are calculating that you've been queen for longer than most of them have been alive. There's also curiosity about what you're thinking, what this milestone means to you personally." The Queen nodded. This was the question she had been pondering herself. "You know," she said slowly, "when I was young, 90 seemed impossibly old. Now, I feel much the same as I did at 60 or 70. The body may be older, but the sense of purpose remains as strong as ever." She thought about her parents, who had not lived to see such advanced age. Her father, King George VI, had died at just 56, worn down by the stresses of war and kingship. Her mother, the Queen Mother, had lived to 101, providing a model of grace and vitality in later life. "Mother always said that age was largely a state of mind," the Queen mused. "I think I understand what she meant now." Meanwhile, at Highgrove House, Prince Charles was having his own moment of reflection about his mother's milestone. At 67, he was older than his mother had been when she celebrated her silver jubilee. The mathematics of monarchy were complex. He had been heir to the throne for longer than most monarchs had actually reigned. Charles walked through the organic gardens he had created over decades, thinking about legacy and time. His mother's longevity had given him unique preparation for kingship, but it had also meant a lifetime of waiting. As he approached his 70th birthday, he wondered what lessons this extraordinary milestone of his mother's offered. "The Queen has redefined what it means to age in public service," he said to Camilla as they sat in their private sitting room. "She's shown that experience and wisdom only grow more valuable with time." The Duchess of Cornwall, who had married into the family later in life, offered a different perspective. "She's also shown remarkable adaptability. Think about how much the world has changed since she became queen. The woman who sends emails and video calls with world leaders is the same person who was crowned before television was common in most homes." Charles pondered this observation. His mother had indeed navigated technological and social changes that would have challenged anyone. From the first televised coronation to social media, from the end of empire to Brexit, she had maintained steadiness while adapting to constant change. At Anmer Hall, Prince William was discussing similar themes with Catherine as they watched their young children play in the garden. The sight of Prince George and Princess Charlotte, unaware of the historic significance of their great-grandmother's approaching birthday, reminded him of the generational continuity that monarchy represented. "The children will grow up with stories of their great-grandmother who reigned for over 60 years, Williams said to Catherine. "That kind of consistency and dedication will be part of their understanding of what service means." Catherine, who had married into the royal family as an adult, had her own perspective on the Queen's achievement. What strikes me is how she's made duty look effortless. The public sees the grace and dignity, but we see the daily work, the constant attention to detail, the genuine care she brings to every engagement. The conversation turned to their own future roles. William knew that his grandmother's longevity meant he would likely assume greater responsibilities while still relatively young, just as his father was doing. The Queen's 90th birthday was a reminder that the monarchy was not just about the present monarch, but about the institution's continuity across generations. I think about the promises she made at her coronation, William continued. She vowed to serve for her whole life. Most people make career changes, retire, pursue different interests. She's maintained the same fundamental purpose for over 60 years. At Clarence House, Prince Harry was meeting with his private secretary about a more personal aspect of the birthday celebrations. As someone who had struggled with the public aspects of royal life, Harry had unique insights into what his grandmother's achievement represented. People don't always understand the sacrifice involved, Harry said, looking out at the London traffic. Every day, every decision, every public appearance, it's all considered through the lens of duty and service. She's never had the luxury of being off-duty. Harry's military service had given him deep appreciation for duty and sacrifice, but even his deployment to Afghanistan had been temporary. His grandmother's deployment had lasted over 6 decades and counting. The mental strength required for that level of consistency is extraordinary, he reflected. His thoughts turned to his mother, Princess Diana, and how she might have viewed this milestone. Diana had struggled with the constraints of royal life, but she had also understood and respected the Queen's dedication. Harry believed his mother would have been genuinely moved by the achievement and the public response to it. Princess and reviewing logistics for the birthday events at Gatcombe Park, approached the milestone from her characteristic practical perspective. As someone who had grown up watching her mother's dedication firsthand and had deep understanding of what the Queen's longevity in the role represented, people focus on the ceremonial aspects, and said to her husband, Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, but what I admire is the daily grind she's maintained. The boxes of papers every day, the meetings, the briefings, she's never let up on the fundamental work of being informed and engaged, and had inherited her mother's work ethic and sense of duty, becoming one of the hardest working members of the royal family. She understood that public service required both public moments and private preparation. The 90th birthday is really a celebration of sustained excellence, she concluded. At the Royal Lodge, Prince Andrew was thinking about his mother's role as a parent alongside her public duties. As her third child, Andrew had memories of a mother who was already an experienced queen, someone who had learned to balance family life with the demands of the crown. She managed to be present as a mother while carrying the weight of the crown, Andrew reflected. That's not something that gets talked about much in the official biographies, but it's remarkable when you think about it. The Queen's success in raising 4 children while managing the demands of monarchy had required careful coordination and strong support systems. Andrew remembered family holidays that had to be planned around state visits, Christmas celebrations that included official duties, private moments stolen between public engagements. Prince Edward, the youngest of the Queen's children, had perhaps the most relaxed relationship with his mother's role. Born when she was already an established monarch, Edward had grown up taking her extraordinary position somewhat for granted. Now, approaching her 90th birthday, he was newly appreciative of what she had accomplished. I think I'm only just beginning to understand how unique her achievement is, Edward confided to Sophie. 90 years old, 64 years on the throne, and still actively engaged with the world. It's unprecedented in history. Sophie nodded, thinking about her own children's relationship with their grandmother. Louise and James see her as Granny first, Queen second. But they're beginning to understand that their grandmother is a historical figure of extraordinary significance. As the family members shared their reflections and preparations, a common theme emerged. The Queen's 90th birthday was not just a personal milestone, but a moment that highlighted the unique nature of constitutional monarchy in the modern world. She had demonstrated that ancient institutions could remain relevant and valuable in contemporary society. The various family perspectives revealed different aspects of her character. The dutiful monarch, the loving mother and grandmother, the woman of faith, the horse enthusiast, the constitutional expert. Together, these viewpoints created a complete picture of someone who had managed to be both an extraordinary public figure and a real person with genuine relationships and private interests. The approaching celebrations would honor all these dimensions of her life, creating events that were both grand enough for a monarch and personal enough for a beloved family member. The Queen's 90th birthday had become an opportunity for the royal family to express their love and admiration for someone who had shaped their lives while serving the nation with unparalleled dedication. The actual birthday weekend in April 2016 began with intimate family moments that the public would never see. At Windsor Castle, the Queen woke on her 90th birthday to find Prince Philip already awake, reading the morning papers in the sitting room adjoining their bedroom. Despite his own advanced age, Philip had maintained his habit of rising early and staying informed about current events. "Happy birthday, Lilibet," he said, using the private nickname he had called her since their courtship. After nearly 70 years of marriage, their relationship had evolved into something both deeply romantic and pragmatically supportive. Philip understood better than anyone the weight his wife carried and the genuine sacrifice her dedication represented. The Queen smiled and joined him, noting the stack of birthday cards and messages that had already begun arriving. "How many?" she asked, gesturing toward the correspondence. "Thousands already," Philip replied. "The post office says they've never seen anything like it for a birthday." Messages from every Commonwealth country, heads of state, children's drawings, poetry from teenagers, letters from war veterans. The personal messages meant more to her than any official tribute could. Throughout her reign, the Queen had maintained correspondence with ordinary people who had written to her. She remembered names, faces, and stories from decades of public engagements. The birthday messages represented connections built over a lifetime of service. Prince Charles arrived early with Camilla, bringing his personal birthday gift, a leather-bound photo album he had compiled himself, showing photographs of his mother through the decades that captured private moments rather than official portraits. The images showed her laughing with her children, working in the gardens, reading to her grandchildren, enjoying quiet moments with her beloved corgis. "I wanted to give you something that showed the woman, not just the Queen," Charles explained as his mother carefully turned the pages. "These are moments when you've been happiest." The Queen paused at a photograph of herself as a young mother, teaching Charles to ride at Balmoral. "I remember that day," she said softly. "You were so determined to master it immediately. You've always been like that, impatient with the learning process, eager to move forward." The comment carried multiple layers of meaning. Charles understood that it referred not just to childhood riding lessons, but to his lifelong preparation for kingship. At 67, he was still learning from his mother, still preparing for responsibilities that might come at any time. William and Catherine arrived with their children, and the formality of the occasion immediately softened as Prince George and Princess Charlotte rushed to embrace their great-grandmother. The Queen's face transformed in their presence, becoming animated with genuine delight. These private family moments revealed the person behind the public figure. Gone, we made you a birthday cake," Princess Charlotte announced proudly, referring to the small cake she and George had helped prepare in the nursery kitchen. The Queen received this simple gift with the same gracious attention she would give to a state gift from a foreign dignitary. Prince George, now old enough to understand that his great-grandmother was special, had drawn her a picture of horses. "I drew your favorite things," he explained seriously. "Horses and dogs and castles." The Queen studied the drawing carefully, asking questions about each element. These interactions with her great-grandchildren energized her in ways that official duties rarely could. They represented the future, the continuation of the family, and the institution she had served so faithfully. Prince Harry arrived with news that the military tribute plan for the weekend had grown beyond all expectations. Veterans from conflicts spanning 7 decades had volunteered to participate. "Granny, we've had responses from men who served in Korea in the 1950s all the way to recent Afghanistan veterans. They all want to be there." The Queen was visibly moved. Her role as Commander-in-Chief had always been one of her most meaningful responsibilities. She had sent 3 generations of servicemen and women into harm's way, and their willingness to honor her represented validation of her commitment to their welfare. Princess, and ever practical, provided updates on the weekend's logistics while the family gathered around the breakfast table. "The weather forecast is good. The crowds are already gathering despite the early hour, and security reports that people have been camping out to get good positions for tomorrow's procession." The Queen listened to these details with interest, but her attention was clearly focused on the family around her. After decades of balancing public duty with private life, she had learned to compartmentalize, giving full attention to whichever role required her focus at any given moment. Prince Andrew's daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, presented their grandmother with a digital compilation of messages from young people across the Commonwealth. The video showed teenagers and young adults from dozens of countries sharing what the Queen and the Commonwealth meant to them. "It's not just nostalgia, Granny," Eugenie explained. "Young people see the Commonwealth as something positive, something that connects them to a larger community. They see you as the person who's held it together while it evolved." The Queen watched the video with deep interest. Throughout her reign, she had wondered whether the Commonwealth would survive as more than a historical curiosity. The enthusiasm of these young people suggested that the Voluntary Association of Nations had indeed evolved into something meaningful for new generations. Prince Edward and Sophie arrived with their children, Louise and James, who had prepared a musical performance for their grandmother. The teenage siblings had composed a simple song that incorporated elements of traditional music from various Commonwealth countries. "We wanted to show how different cultures can create something beautiful together," Louise explained before they began performing. The metaphor was not lost on the Queen, who had spent her reign trying to hold together an association of diverse nations with different traditions, cultures, and interests. As the family gathered for lunch, the conversation naturally turned to memories and reflections on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. The Queen found herself sharing stories from the early years of her reign that her children and grandchildren had never heard before. "I remember the first Christmas broadcast," she said thoughtfully. "I was terrified. Father had made it look so effortless, but I was 25 years old trying to find the right tone to address millions of people. I kept thinking about all the families who would be gathered around their radios, listening to this young woman they barely knew." Charles leaned forward with interest. "You never told us about being nervous." "Oh, I was nervous about many things in those early years," the Queen admitted. "Meeting heads of state who were decades older and more experienced, making constitutional decisions that would affect millions of people, trying to modernize traditions without losing their meaning." These revelations provided her family with new insight into the courage and determination that had carried her through the early, most challenging years of her reign. The composed, confident Queen they had known all their lives had begun as a young woman learning the most demanding job in the world with no possibility of resignation or retirement. Princess and asked about the decision-making process during constitutional crises. "When you've had to deal with political difficulties, hung parliaments, constitutional questions, how did you know what was right?" The Queen considered the question carefully. "I learned early that the monarch's role is to provide stability and continuity, especially during uncertain times. When politicians are fighting, when the country is divided, the crown must represent something above the fray. But that doesn't mean being passive. It means being available, being informed, being ready to facilitate solutions." This explanation revealed the sophisticated understanding of constitutional monarchy that the Queen had developed over decades. Her role was not ceremonial decoration, but active facilitation of democratic government and national unity. As the afternoon progressed, the conversation turned to the future and the lessons the Queen hoped to pass on to her successors. William and Harry listened particularly intently, understanding that these informal family discussions were part of their ongoing education in royal duty. The key, the Queen said, is remembering that this is never about personal preference or ambition. The crown exists to serve the people, not the other way around. Every decision, every public appearance, every statement must be considered through that lens. These words carried particular weight coming from someone who had lived them for over 6 decades. The Queen's 90th birthday celebration was becoming not just a commemoration of her achievement, but a masterclass in constitutional monarchy for the generations who would follow her. The family's private celebration revealed the deep affection and respect that existed within the royal family. Despite the pressures and public scrutiny they faced, they had remained fundamentally connected by love, shared purpose, and mutual support. The Queen's milestone birthday became an opportunity for them to express gratitude for the example she had set and the institution she had strengthened through her lifelong dedication. The public celebrations on the weekend following the Queen's actual birthday revealed the extraordinary connection she had built with the British people and the Commonwealth over her long reign. As the royal family prepared for the day's events, each member carried with them the emotional weight of what this milestone represented, not just for their family, but for the institution of monarchy itself. The morning began with the traditional trooping the color ceremony, but this year's event carried special significance. As the Queen, dressed in a bright lime green coat and matching hat, took her place on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, the roar from the crowd gathered below was unlike anything her family had ever experienced. It was not just applause, but something deeper, a collective expression of admiration, affection, and gratitude that had built over decades. Prince Philip, standing beside his wife, observed the crowd with wonder. In his long life, he had witnessed many historic moments, but the genuine outpouring of emotion from the public struck him as extraordinary. "Listen to them, Lilibet," he said quietly. "That's not just respect, that's genuine love." The Queen smiled and waved to the crowd, but privately she was moved by the response. Throughout her reign, she had maintained careful distance from public emotion, believing that the crown required dignity and restraint. But this moment felt different, more personal, more connected to the relationships she had built with ordinary people through countless public engagements. Prince Charles, watching from nearby, understood that he was witnessing a unique moment in royal history. No British monarch had ever celebrated their 90th birthday while still actively reigning, and the public response demonstrated something remarkable about his mother's achievement. The crowd represented multiple generations, elderly people who remembered her coronation, middle-aged people who had grown up during her reign, young families bringing children to witness history. Prince William pointed out different groups in the crowd to Prince Harry. "Look there, those veterans with their medals. And there, that family with the handmade banner. People have traveled from all over the Commonwealth to be here." Harry nodded, genuinely moved by what he was seeing. His relationship with public attention had been complicated, but this felt different from the usual media attention. "This isn't about celebrity," he observed. "This is about something much deeper, recognition of a life devoted to service." The formal ceremony proceeded with military precision, but the atmosphere was warm and celebratory rather than merely ceremonial. When the red arrows flew overhead, painting the sky with red, white, and blue smoke, the crowd's cheer was so loud it could be heard inside the palace. The Queen's face lit up with genuine delight at the spectacular display. Princess Anne, who had participated in many trooping the color ceremonies, noted how different this one felt. "Usually these events are about tradition and continuity," she observed to her husband. "Today feels more like a celebration of an individual achievement, a recognition of what Mother has personally accomplished." The afternoon brought the Thames Diamond Jubilee pageant, but enhanced for the birthday celebration. As the royal barge made its way down the Thames, Crowds lined both banks of the river. The sight was unprecedented. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered to celebrate one person's life and service. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge stood with their children on the royal barge, helping Prince George and Princess Charlotte understand the significance of what they were witnessing. "This is for Gone," Catherine explained to Charlotte. "All these people came to say thank you for everything she's done." Prince George, wide-eyed at the spectacle, asked his father, "Will this happen for you one day?" William considered the question carefully. "Maybe, George, but it would take a very long time and a lot of hard work. Great-grandmother has spent her whole life helping people and serving our country." The child's question highlighted the extraordinary nature of what they were witnessing. The Queen's 90th birthday celebration was not just about reaching advanced age, but about maintaining active service and public engagement for over 6 decades. The public recognition reflected appreciation for sustained excellence in an era when consistency and long-term commitment had become rare qualities. Prince Edward and Sophie watched from another section of the barge with their children. Louise, now a teenager, was old enough to understand the historical significance of the moment. "This is quite something, isn't it?" she said to her mother. "To have this impact on so many people after so many years." Sophie nodded, thinking about her own integration into the royal family. "Your grandmother has shown what leadership really means. It's not about power or privilege. It's about service and sacrifice maintained over decades." The evening brought a private family dinner at Windsor Castle, where the royal family gathered to reflect on the day's events and the deeper meaning of the milestone they were celebrating. The Queen, now changed into a simple evening dress, seemed more relaxed and reflective than she had appeared during the public celebrations. "Today felt different from other royal occasions," she said to her assembled family. "More personal, somehow. I felt a real connection with the people who came to celebrate." Prince Charles raised his glass. "Mother, what we witnessed today was recognition of something unprecedented. You've redefined what it means to be a constitutional monarch in the modern world. You've shown that ancient institutions can remain relevant and valuable when they're led with wisdom and dedication." The Queen was touched by her son's words, but characteristically deflected praise toward others. "Any success I've had has been due to the support of family, excellent advisors, and the patience of the British people as I've learned on the job." Prince Philip, ever practical, added his own perspective. "What you've accomplished, Elizabeth, is proving that duty and service are not outdated concepts. In an age of instant gratification and short-term thinking, you've demonstrated the value of long-term commitment and consistent principles." The conversation turned to the future and the lessons that could be drawn from the Queen's extraordinary achievement. Prince William spoke thoughtfully about the example she had set for future generations of the royal family. "You've shown us that this role is about service, not self," he said. "You've proved that the monarchy can evolve and adapt while maintaining its essential purpose. That's the foundation we'll build on." Prince Harry added his own reflection. "What struck me today was how many young people were in those crowds. The monarchy isn't just surviving into the future. It's engaging new generations who see value in what you represent." Princess, and ever direct, offered her assessment of her mother's achievement. "You've simply outlasted everyone's expectations and proved that experience and wisdom are valuable. You've shown that leadership isn't about charisma or popularity. It's about competence and consistency." The Queen listened to these tributes with deep emotion, though she remained composed. "You know," she said finally, "when I made that promise on my 21st birthday to serve for my whole life, I had no idea what that would actually mean. I thought about service in abstract terms. Now I understand that it means choosing duty over personal preference, day after day, year after year." Prince Edward asked about her thoughts on reaching 90 while still actively working. "Do you ever think about slowing down? About reducing your responsibilities?" The Queen considered the question seriously. "I think about the future, certainly. But I also think about the example I want to set. If I can still serve effectively, if I can still contribute, then I believe I should continue. The crown is not a part-time responsibility. This response revealed something fundamental about her character. The Queen's longevity in the role was not simply about good health or favorable circumstances. It was about a deep commitment to the responsibilities she had accepted as a young woman. As the evening progressed, family members shared their own thoughts about what the day had meant to them personally. The Duchess of Cornwall spoke about joining the family later in life and witnessing the Queen's dedication firsthand. The Countess of Wessex reflected on raising her children with an understanding of their grandmother's extraordinary achievement. The younger generation, Princes William and Harry, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, talked about growing up with a grandmother who also happened to be one of the most significant figures in modern history. They had learned to separate the private person they loved from the public figure they respected, but this birthday had reminded them that the two were inseparably linked. As the family evening concluded, the Queen offered her own final reflection on the milestone and what it represented. "Today reminded me that the monarchy is not about any individual person," she said. "It's about the relationship between the crown and the people maintained across generations. What we celebrated today was not just my 90th birthday, but the enduring value of that relationship." The 90th birthday celebrations had become more than a personal milestone. They had demonstrated the unique place the Queen held in British and Commonwealth society, the deep affection and respect she had earned through decades of service, and the foundation she had built for the future of the monarchy. Her family had witnessed not just a birthday party, but a reaffirmation of the values and principles that had guided her extraordinary reign. The events had shown that constitutional monarchy, when practiced with wisdom and dedication, remained relevant and valuable in the modern world. The Queen's 90th birthday had become a celebration of service, duty, and the enduring power of consistent leadership in an age of rapid change. For her family, it was a reminder of the extraordinary woman they were privileged to know as mother, grandmother, and queen.